What's up, guys? So I finally have some free time. I just got back from the gym and I'm gonna eat my meal prep first. The usual asparagus, ground chicken, pico with eggs while watching a Christian Guzman video. I'm gonna crush this and I'm gonna get ready to make a new video for you guys. Alright, so last week was like the worst week of my life. But before that, I went to get some Cuban food for the first time with a couple of the homies. So we had Neuro written, Neuro practical, MS written, and MS practical all in that 1 week. So 4 different things. And I mean, each thing required at least like a week to study for. So it was just so much stuff. For Neuro, the content covered stuff from last video that I talked about, motor sensory testing, functional outcome measures, and then we also talked about upper extremity examination, like the Chadok, Jepsen, Fugelmeyer to test like hand function, motor functions, stuff like that. Also PNF techniques involving the D1, D2 pattern of upper extremity, lower extremity, and chop lift patterns, and thrust, ulnar thrust. So these are just different patterns to facilitate movement and help increase strength if needed. So the therapist can provide resistance while you're going through that movement. Yeah, it also works with function, like for reaching, you want to facilitate overhead activities. We also learned about therics, so like different exercises suited for neuro patients, like bridging, in quadruped, what can you do, like trunk stability and different facilitations. We also learned joint approximation of scapula to help with posture, ankles to help planting their foot flat on the floor. Also, we learned opening hand mobilization if their fingers are all flexed in the fist. Okay, so for the neuropractical, we were first given a brief case of our patient. They either had like spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, or Parkinson's. And then the first thing we do is we assess their strength. Either using manual muscle test or upright motor control test if they're able to stand, and also assess their spasticity if needed. Then we were given a outcome measure test to perform. So either one of those from the functional mobility outcome measure or upper extremity examination. Some of them were given instructions, so it wasn't that bad. The last section is movement analysis and intervention. They give us a movement to assess, like I got sit to stand. So I asked the patient to perform sit to stand and I look at how they perform it. And my patient had trouble like shifting forward. They didn't have the lower extremity strength to stand up. So I take that into account. I develop a treatment plan for the patient. I basically carry out the plan on our professors who are playing as our patients. Started off with some PNF strengthening of the lower extremity. I did some bridges in the bridging position and I strengthened their abductors, adductors to prevent like knee buckling. They had that from our case. And just bridges to help strengthen the extensors. For the weight shift, I had trouble with forward shifting. I had used a big ball and they roll forward side to side to work on putting more weight toward the right side, which was affected. And now we're going to move on to MS. So the format and everything's basically been the same for written and practical. So I'm not going to go over the same stuff. So I'll go over like the main new concepts that were important from this module of the lumbar spine. So to help diagnose our patients, we first ask them to perform repetitive motion, which is a series of movements to determine if they have directional preference, meaning that they feel better with either flexion or extension and their symptoms change location. So if they have directional preference, that means they either have discogenic or stenosis. And if they don't have directional preference, that's good because now we know they either have facet, instability, or even something wrong with the SIJ, the sacroiliac joint. Also, history is important as always, because from the history, we can gather a lot of useful information to help to already give us a pretty solid diagnosis. So say they have pain with sit to stand. We know it's either discogenic or SIJ most likely, and if they hear audible sounds, that means most likely it will be instability. Okay, so now let's talk about the lumbar thrust manipulation. We learned 2 techniques for the lumbar spine, and one's in side lying and one's in supine. I'll demonstrate both in this video. Something I learned new about the thrust manipulation, I've always thought that it's pretty cool and you can like thrust anyone and try to get that pop, the cavitation, which is not true. Usually when people feel the need to be popped or they have trouble with like staying static, staying in the same position, they always feel like they need to move around, change position. That means they usually have instability and they should not be popped, because if you have instability, you're hypermobile, meaning that you have excessive motion. So the point of the thrust manipulation is to increase mobility for the people who are hypomobile. So I think I have instability because my isolated lumbar flexion is excessive when I measured it. I can't stay in the same position. I always have to move around. So, and I hear a lot of pop when someone thrusts me. And also with the popping, research shows that it's not either, whether you hear the pop or not, it doesn't really matter. If the technique is correct and you're doing it for the right reasons, which is to increase mobility, then that's good. So starting with the thrust manipulation in sideline, the correct procedure is to always assess the mobility of your patient, like I'm doing right now, and make sure that they're hypomobile so that your thrust will be effective. So I'm performing these techniques on Manny, who is actually hypomobile, and I actually hear a pop with this one. So first I start off by positioning his top leg, hooking it behind the bottom leg, and then twisting his upper body to face the ceiling as much as possible, taking him to end range, and then tell him to cross his arms, and then that's when I prepare for the manipulation. Oh, got it. And next, for the supine technique, first I adjust their hips to shift it toward me, and then I tell them to cross their arms all the way, completely overlapped, and I twist their upper body again, pull his upper body toward me until his hips start to come off the mat a little bit, and that's when I apply the thrust.
Yeah.
For both techniques, you have to take the patient to end range before thrusting in order for it to be effective. And as for gender, we've been going over pregnancy. I don't know much about yet because I've been putting it off. We've been all just studying for MS and neuro. So maybe next video I will include some of that pregnancy stuff. Oh, also, if you guys are in need of a good laugh, I got a couple of clips of me playing iron basketball terribly. So enjoy. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.